Everybody, welcome back to the NC State Insider Podcast. I'm your host and lead beat writer for NC State on SI, Tucker Sennett, here on Monday evening, recording this and back again to talk more Wolfpack football as we're in the full swing of things here, getting ready for a Week 4 matchup against the Duke Blue Devils. Dave Doeren had his Monday night press conference tonight. So I'll just run you through some takeaways from that, as well as some takeaways from the NC State depth chart ahead of that Duke matchup. Doran was, per usual, pretty. He played his cards close to the chest, as he always does in the lead up to these games. Sort of some fallout from the Sebastian Harsh suspension. He would not reveal anything about what the game plan is going to look like there. Um, Harsh is listed as the starting edge rusher on the depth chart, but I think it's safe to assume that redshirt freshman Chase Bond will get some run there, as well as Isaiah Shirley coming off of that interception return for a tackle or return for a touchdown, not a tackle. What am I saying? But he'll probably get some looks there, maybe some different looks with Sloan filling in, and then probably Travali Price is another guy to keep an eye on filling in for Harsh. But obviously Doran likes to keep things as close and as secretive as possible heading into these games. So didn't get a lot of intel there. We did get sort of his opening thoughts on Duke quarterback Darian Mensah. He's certainly concerned about Mensa's ability to roll out of the pocket and throw. That's something he showed off against Tulane, even though Duke lost that game. It's definitely a strength for Mensah that NC State might have some trouble with. They've struggled a little bit with mobile quarterbacks so far this season. Chandler Morris was able to get out of the pocket and make some nice throws in that Virginia game. And Robbie Ashford in this last game started out really well, sort of punished this Wolfpack defense on the ground a fair amount, and then tapered off in that second half when NC State was able to sort of force him to be a passer. They haven't really seen anything like Mensah yet. He's not a runner per se. He hasn't really shown much desire to get out and run in the open field, but he certainly does roll out a lot, whether it's by design or by just being nifty and finding guys open by creating extra time and extending plays. So that's definitely an issue with this Wolfpack secondary that has at times been weak in longer developing plays, especially downfield. Duke has some receivers that Dorn was worried about, particularly Keyshawn Brown. That's a kid who has some serious downfield speed. So we'll see how NC State attacks him in this game. Other stuff on the depth chart, nothing serious. Ronnie Royal looks to be below J.J. Johnson on the depth chart at free safety. Royal did have an interception in that Wake Forest win, but he has struggled in coverage, particularly down the field. He had a couple explosives that were kind of his fault. Same with Brody Barnhart. They're both young, learning redshirt freshmen. Barnhart's now the starting strong safety, with J.J. Johnson behind him at that position. So not really sure what's going on there at the safety spot. Could be some injury type stuff. We'll see. Hopefully, we'll find out more throughout the course of the week with the injury reports coming out. So we'll be on top of that for you. And then as for the offense, it looks like the Yusuf Muggerbill experience might be sort of slowing down. He had a rough showing in the opening stages of that Wake Forest game, and then we didn't really see him again. So he's now behind Anthony Carter Jr. at left guard. He was starting at right guard in the last game, played less than 10 snaps and then didn't return to the game. And as far as we know, there's no injury there. So we'll see what kind of role he's able to carve out for himself moving forward. So they'll roll with Carter Jr. at left guard, Peak obviously at left tackle still, Jalen Grant still at center. Kamen Smith is now going to get the start at right guard this week. We'll see how he does in that spot. Val Erickson's going to be behind him, and then Teague Anderson at right tackle again. They've really relied on those tight ends. Doran talked about them, particularly Cody Hardy in the blocking game. We've written about his just addition to the team and how much it's meant to this run game. And I expect that to continue in a big way against Duke because this Duke defense really hasn't been what it normally is, and their strength is definitely pass rush. So I expect Doran and offensive coordinator Kurt Roper to try and get the run game going pretty early. He didn't talk a ton about CJ Bailey today, somewhat because there weren't a lot of questions. He did talk about the first half defensive issues. He thinks a lot of it, Doran, this is Doran I'm talking about. Doran thinks a lot of it is you don't have film of these teams yet, and they're so new. They're so new with new coordinators and new coaches and new players that a lot of them, Wake Forest in particular, was an extreme example of this. You really had no idea what they were going to run because they had played an FB or a pseudo FBS school in Kennesaw State and an FCS school the week after. And so they were just kind of a giant mystery in terms of how they were going to attack the NC State defense. And so Doran called it they fall back on their rules, their defensive rules, and then as the game goes on, you make those adjustments, and that's been a strength of DJ Elliott in his first year as the team's defensive coordinator, really finding ways to adjust and save these games in the second half, which the Wolfpack did more than save the game defensively. They held Wake Forest scoreless and kind of turned that into a dominating performance after that rough start. So Duke has played top tier competition, so they've had to show a little bit more. They had that game against Illinois where they fell apart at the end, and then last week against Tulane, they had to show, more of who they are for sure offensively, which should help this NC State defense settle in a little bit better. We saw that they were definitely comfortable against ECU because ECU probably had the most returners that they've faced so far this year. Virginia was basically a completely new team, and then Wake Forest was almost all new guys as well, given the sort of regime changes that happened at Wake Forest, and then Virginia finally kind of going all in on this Tony Elliott era. Um, Doran was asked about the coach firings. Um, didn't really go in too much depth there. Didn't mention Brent Pry or Deshaun Foster at UCLA by name. So just kind of the political answer from him there. He feels for those guys and anybody who's lost a job, and um, obviously wouldn't comment on any recruiting that might happen with sort of the rumors coming out of Virginia Tech of a mass exodus there before the season even really gets going here, which is sort of something I expect to adjust because schools are sort of allowing a completely lost season when they fire a coach before the red shirt period even ends. And so Virginia Tech, they might not. We'll see how many players they have left on that roster after the next couple weeks. Shorter episode today. Sorry about that, but hope this was helpful, giving you some news ahead of this week 4 matchup with Duke Blue Devils. As always, you can follow me on Twitter or X at Senate Tucker. You can follow the website on X at Wolfpack on SI. You can find our Facebook page, the NC State on SI Wolfpack Facebook page, and you can find more of these NC State Insider Podcast episodes on the Sports Videos on SI YouTube channel anytime, every day. Thanks for coming, and we'll see you next time.